Mhm. What up, what up, what up, what up, what up? Yes, what's going on, y'all? This is a very special How Billy Sees It occurring today on a Tuesday. Um, Thanks for checking in, everybody who checks in. Today we're doing it on a Tuesday because I have a very special guest. You already know this guy. I've done a ton of stuff with him. I've known him for over a decade. He's one of my favorite people in the entire world on the planet. Documentary filmmaker, creative, journalist, writer, activist, great guy, Jesse Freeston, partner and co-host on Where Is Now. There he is, Jesse Freeston.
Beep, beep, beep.
Yeah, there we go. Here we go, dropping those bombs.
That's it. Yeah. It's my ominous intro. I like that.
That one's loud. That one's really loud.
That's wicked. That's my DJ future right there.
What up, Jess?
Add that to this. Billy.
How you doing,
nice
man?
intro, man. It means a lot to hear that from you because I hold you in similar regard, and we've been through lots of things in real IRL and OL.
Absolutely.
Online.
Oh man, I've never heard that before. Is that a thing? OL?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be, probably.
Creative, ladies and gentlemen. Told you.
Acronym creation live.
One of the first things I do, so Jesse and I are long good. I see you now.
Okay, I can hear you.
Okay. So yeah, where are you, Jesse? What part of the world are you?
Montreal, Quebec, Canada, Misfit Island, people call it.
Really?
Montreal is a place where lots of outcasts gather to create things, complain about the rest of the continent, and create a movement for an independent city republic, which hasn't really happened yet, but sometime soon.
Excellent. A little bit of political history there for Montreal.
I don't even know. It's more like speculative fiction, but yeah.
What are you up to, man? What you like? You know, how are things? How's your first week of 2013 been? How's everything looking?
Okay, so what keeps me sane in January in Montreal is playing hockey outside.
Nice.
Historically, if you want to get into the history, but it's been unbelievably mild this year.
Mild as in the weather? It's not cold? Is that what you're saying?
In the weather, we have not had yet a single day of outdoor hockey. Like, there has not been. You need like a sustained, I don't know what it is in Fahrenheit. Like, you need like a sustained few nights of 10 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit or whatever.
Okay.
Maybe a week or colder to like get a good solid base of ice. And that sounds ridiculous, right?
You're complaining.
You're like, I can't believe this motherfuckers out here complaining about how it hasn't been cold enough.
Oh, it's not cold enough, eh? Wait, come on.
It sounds ridiculous, man, but you can imagine it. I don't know, like what's like. Let's say you decide you're gonna go bungee jumping, right? It's something you did, right, Billy?
No.
Skydiving or something? Okay. Me neither.
Okay.
But like you could imagine, like, if you got yourself all pumped up to do that and then it was only like a 20-foot jump or something,
right?
It wouldn't be as cool.
Well, you shouldn't do it. So, if it was only 20 feet, just don't do it, because I think that's a sure death.
Same thing. Don't play hockey on slush.
Right. Wait, so is this like you're talking about freezing over a river or something like this, or not a river?
No, just like in the park, you make rinks, right? So
okay.
You set up boards with wood, make the rink, and then you fill it with water and let that freeze.
Gotcha.
And,
okay.
You get yourself a rink. You just keep the snow out of there. Yeah. Wow. So that, anyways, that's the bad news so far. Not cold enough. We're hoping for that to change. And yeah, I mean, the good news, because we got to have some good news to create some balance in the universe.
Yikes.
Tough one. Oh, why did I give myself such a challenge? My plants are alive.
That's good, man.
That's good. My like crazy plant over here is flowering. People think it's the ugliest one. It's called the devil's backbone or the mother of thousands. People think it's a really ugly plant, but then it sprouts these beautiful flowers every once in a while, and everybody shuts their mouth. Everybody who talks shit.
I love how you have these stories. Like you're so like versed in these stories on like I didn't know that's pretty interesting. And so tell me like for a second there you struggled to find a I guess a positive for 2023. Is that like tell
Well,
me where that
you know,
comes from?
like, so where does it come from? So you know when you become aware of certain things in the world in a way that brings you down.
Oh man, of course.
Um, so you might talk about passing from your naive era to your cynical era on certain things, right? And then the goal is to get to post cynical at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess I'm in a cynical thing right now about the future of humanity,
Mm, mm, mm.
particularly how we're using resources.
Wow.
And anyway, we don't have to get into that right away. I know we'll get into that at some point, but I could give you the whole spiel if you want to get into it right now. But
I'd
it's a
love to
whole
get
thing.
into that, man. Let's since you brought that
All
up,
right,
let's jump right into that, man. Because you've been doing a
here
lot
it
of
is.
work recently in you were talking about resources and energy and resources and
Hmm.
really getting into nuclear power. And I saw recently my interest peaked because some new technology, something related to was like fusion,
Yeah.
and you're talking to someone who has no clue what they're talking about when I say something like fusion. And I know I'm talking to one of the preeminent people on this fucking planet to actually answer these questions. So what's going on with that? It seemed to me a positive thing. It seemed to me like some kind of new fucking frontier of solving problems, and
Hmm.
yet you're speaking this way. So tell me about this.
All right. Can I take the long route to fusion that starts with oxen and mules and stuff?
Shit. Yeah.
Can we go
Yeah.
from there to fusion with your
I
permission?
I give you permission. How long are we thinking there? Is that sounds like a 3 days to me.
It should be with a proper expert. It would be. You call me a preeminent person. I am at best a non-expert who is managed to figure out ways to talk about this way faster than you should be able to. Like an expert would never be able to do this as fast as I'm about to probably,
Okay.
because I will skip over things. But more or less, for like every species on Earth is in the search for energy, right? Which they almost all of them get through food. Plants get it through the sun and photosynthesis. Animals eat those plants, and then animals eat those animals, and that it like the life is like this constant search for energy. I'm not saying that's the only thing that's going on, but that's often the thing that determines who survives, who wins, who gets to procreate, all that good stuff. It's like the race that's going on. And then, meanwhile, over hundreds of millions of years or billions of years, the planet. So all this stuff, its source is the sun, right? So the sun powers the plants, and then the plants power the animals, and what have you.
Uh huh.
All and even stuff like wind is also powered by the sun. I'll get to that in a second. I'm jumping ahead. Over billion years or more, the this solar energy that forms in plants ended up in the ocean. The plankton, they absorb this, they do the photosynthesis, they absorb oxygen, they die, and they absorb carbon dioxide to make oxygen, and then they fall to the bottom of the ocean. Over millions and millions of years they accumulate, and then they get covered, and then they go down further down, and they start to get really hot and under pressure, and over millions of years they create something that we call oil or natural gas. And then, meanwhile, on the other side, trees and bigger plants are doing the same thing. They're making oxygen through photosynthesis, collecting carbon in carbon dioxide, dying, falling to the ground, ending up deep underground over millions of years, where there's a lot of pressure and heat, and they become coal.
Okay.
So now we've got these. The planet has these three forms that it has stored incredibly dense amounts of energy in its crust,
So
right?
oil, coal,
Oil and gas.
and gas. Okay.
Right, right.
Interesting. Okay.
These things are unprecedented. So up until us figuring out how to exploit the work instead, we figured out how to get other humans from other nations or tribes or who had committed crimes or whatever, for whatever reason, to get them to do the work for free. humans figured out ways to try to get other things to do the work, but it was still all the work was being powered by food, right? Like it was all just what people could eat and what animals could eat and do, right? Then some windmills and things, they started to make a little more energy to ground up the grain and save some of that muscle power for other stuff. But then the big explosion of this whole energy thing is when they figure out, about 200 years ago, humans figure out how to take these three stores of energy from the ground, starting with coal and then later with oil and then natural gas. And then these things have an unbelievable. So 1 barrel of oil, Billy, can do the amount of physical work of 5 years of human labor. So let me just what like you've seen a barrel.
Yeah.
There's 5 years of human labor in that barrel.
A single human person.
A single human person working 8 hours a day, whatever it is. We are currently, so then if you take the natural gas and the coal as well, and you make the equivalent of what we burn of those two things, and you make them into the equivalent of oil barrels as well, we are burning as a species 100 billion barrels of oil equivalent energy a year, which means we're getting right now 500 billion humans. We have like the equivalent of 500 billion humans working right now.
That's fueling our homes and our cars and the travel and lights and lots of things I haven't even considered yet. The heat.
Yeah, and then you've got all this no, but this is you're building right on like our water, like our whole water system, our agriculture system. It's like half of all the food on Earth basically exists because of fertilizer that is taken straight from natural gas. Our streets are paved with oil, right? Asphalt is basically oil with some rock in it or whatever. Wow. We don't know how to make concrete or steel without these things. Glass, like so much of the stuff, like all this stuff that we have, is the result of this explosion, right?
It feels so. Can I just to summarize it in my head for me, like so? It feels like there's a problem here because obviously we're highly dependent on these things, and also, is it fair to say that like our cities and our entire way of life is kind of a bubble? It's existing sort of in a way that's unnatural or unsustainable. I guess that's the word, unsustainable, right there. Where
and it's a bubble that's inflating every day faster than the day before. So like human energy use on this planet just goes up and up and up, no matter what, no matter how many conferences about climate change we have or whatever, it keeps going up. And like all the you can go to places like Germany or whatever, you'll see solar panels and wind turbines everywhere, and they're not actually diminishing the amount of fossil fuels we're burning. They're just people are just using that energy too.
On top. Is it fair to say that you mentioned Germany? Is it fair to say that that internally to Germany that they've done something that has changed their consumption, or are you saying about the whole globe, or or do some places have they sort of figured it out for themselves?
I don't know. Nobody's figured it out. And this is so. I was just at the UN climate change conference in Egypt in November. And that was the most frustrating thing. It's like you have these arguments about like this country declared they'll be carbon neutral, meaning that they will not emit any extra carbon into the atmosphere, which is primarily the result of burning these three types of fossil fuels.
Right.
We will be carbon neutral by 2050. And then the response is, that's not soon enough. You should commit to doing it earlier. And politicians are like, all right, sure, we'll sign a paper saying we'll do it earlier, 2045. Why not? And I'm not going to be in power anymore. And nobody's like, wait, but what's your fucking plan?
Right.
Like, how are you planning on doing this? Because nobody's got a real plan. And that's the scary story for me. That's the root of my inability to come up with like positive statements about 2023 just yet. Is it's like really coming to the realization that there is no plan. There's no real plan.
Right.
But there are some, like, life on this planet is going to change drastically. Like nobody knows for sure when the oil is going to run out. Right. You could talk to 10 experts about it, you're going to get 10 totally different answers. And people have historically been wrong all the time, right? About this stuff, the predictions that are made that it's going to run out soon, but it will run out at some point. But it won't run out in the sense of like it's like overnight. It's like there's none left. It's gonna be like certain areas are gonna run out first, then certain places are gonna like militarize what's left, and you know what I mean. It's gonna be an unequal, and like prices are gonna go through the roof, and then only the rich will have access to it. And like this is the vision I have in my
That's gonna
head.
be
With
that sounds like a horrifying horror movie mess, right?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah, and you felt you could feel this a little bit in Egypt, where you're at this place, Sharm el Sheikh, which is where the UN climate change conference was held, and you're in the middle of a desert, and then it's just resorts. It's like Cancun meets Las Vegas. It's this weird place, and you got these massive resorts that are like 3 miles by 4 miles long, and just so it's a walled city. The city's got like military checkpoints coming in, and it has a wall around it. And then once you get in the city, and it's just desert. And then once you get in the city, then it's like walled resorts. And inside the resorts is like desalinated water. So they burn natural gas to take the salt out of the water, to water all these plants and trees and stuff. So you have these like
because
green compounds.
because there's no water anywhere around,
Yeah,
So it's like this. So this is the exact bubble scenario, right? Because that
yeah,
everything that exists there, the commerce and all those resorts and all, it has to import these resources, or which takes gas and things to bring them on trucks or whatever,
yeah,
or what you said, which is some other technology to extract stuff as well.
yeah.
So
And so this is how I ended up at nuclear. So basically, if you look at all the sources of energy we have, so you've got what you might call new solar energy, which is like when the sun's rays arrive, so solar panels or whatever, uh, wind turbines, which is also powered by the sun in the sense that the sun creates wind by creating temperature differences, which pushes the air around.
mm,
And then you've got water, right? You've got hydro dams, and that's also actually the energy's coming from the sun, because it's the sun that evaporates the water, pulls the water up in the air, and then rains it down somewhere else on top of a mountain, and then that creates the downward flow of the water, which is what you capture with a dam. So that's also like a solar energy, right? These are all like what you call like new sun. Then you've got like older sun, which is trees. You could burn those if you want to make some energy, but that's not very effective. And then you've got like ancient sun, which is those three fossil fuels I was talking about, right? And then and as you go older, you get more dense, right? You get more power for your volume,
right,
right? Like
right.
the older that sun is, the more power you get. And then you get to the really old shit, which is nuclear energy.
Mm,
So which comes from uranium or maybe thorium, which were born in supernovas,
wow.
right? It's
Yo, I
like
love
like
that I love that description there, and the way that you tied nuclear to the other forms of power through its age and its density and its potential energy.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's it's like potentially older than our sun. We don't know. It's like it's born in supernovas that then when our solar system forms get pulled in by the gravity and whatever, and then get wrapped, then the uranium gets wrapped into what becomes the earth.
Wow.
And it's just in there in the crust, right? And in the oceans. Um and so this stuff is unbelievably energy dense. So like this much uranium, like if you can see it, I'm holding like a gummy bear, like the size
Yeah.
of a gummy bear.
Right.
I'm trying to remember the number now, but it's got the equivalent of like 100 barrels of oil or something, or 120 barrels of oil in a
Wow.
gummy bear. It's
Mm,
like unbelievably dense because it's unleashing the power of E equals MC squared, that formula that we're all walking around with in our heads, but none of us, including myself, really have no idea how it works.
right.
But
What it's applied to.
basically, it means that there's an unbelievable amount of energy in the matter if you can get it out.
Okay.
And the only way we've figured out how to do that is through nuclear fission so far, which is
Fission.
FISSION, which
Mm,
is the nuclear plants and the original nuclear bomb. Um, and the nuclear plants, basically what you're doing with fission is you're taking really big atoms and you're splitting them into two. So you take big uranium atoms formed in these supernovas, which is the explosion of a star, um, and then you split those atoms, and that creates a lot of heat, and you use that to boil the water and spin the turbine and make electricity.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, so this is one thing we can do as we run out of the good fossil fuels. We don't know if we can make steel with it or asphalt or any of these other things that we use in our cities and stuff, but it'll be a different world, but maybe it won't be so terrible. Maybe we won't go back to the drudgery of pre-fossil fuels, you know? Um, but and then fusion comes along, 'cause I promised I'd get you to fusion, right? How long did I take?
I don't know. It's all
We
good,
made
bro. Hold on.
we
Let me
made it to fusion,
let's
'cause I
get into
promised I would
fusion.
do it in less than 3 days, and I hope
I
no
think you're
experts are
crushing it so
listening.
far.
I hope no experts are listening, um, because 'cause, man, are there ever some blanks to fill in this one. But, yeah, so then you get to fusion, which is the other way you can get E equals MC squared to work in your favor. The other way you can get massive amounts of energy out of the matter, which is instead of splitting the atom, you take 2 atoms and you fuse them into 1.
Hmm.
So you do this with really small ones, hydrogen, for example. And this stuff is hard. So this is what powers the sun. The sun, and as far as we know, all stars are powered by fusion energy. So if you think about
Two
the sun,
two atoms or two stars combining.
2 atoms.
Two
So it's
atoms.
like numbers that you wouldn't believe, but like, billions of trillions of atoms fusing, like 2 and 2 becoming 1,
Mm,
like the
mm,
Spice Girls, and
mm,
2
mm,
become 1.
mm.
And that releases a bunch of heat energy. So, yeah, if you think about it that way, like we say the sun is burning, but the sun is not actually burning, it's a fusion reaction. Like
Wow.
it's not combustion. And if it was combustion, the sun would only have lasted like 30, like the size of the sun. If the sun was burning combustion by combustion, it would only have lasted, I think what the number was, like 15,000 years or 20,000 years, some of that.
Mm,
Sounds like a long time, but our sun is going to last like 10 billion years. It's
mm.
already lasted 5 billion years. It's got like another 4 and a bit to go.
Wow.
So that's because that tells you the how dense nuclear energy is,
So
compared
is
to
there
burning
is there
stuff.
a difference in the power from fusion to, I mean, is it between fusion and fission?
Yeah, there's quite a few differences.
Okay.
One is that fusion is way harder.
Fusion's way
Like,
harder to get that energy out.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, fission by comparison is simple.
Is it to say that we're further along and the technology is more geared towards fission than fusion?
Yeah, fission we've been doing safely for the most part, with the exception of like Chernobyl. Fukushima was pretty shitty, but not as bad as people think it was. But the yeah, that's a controversial thing just to throw out there. I should probably
Yeah, man.
I'll come back to that one. Maybe we'll come back to that one. But
Yeah. You seen the
but
Netflix
yeah,
stuff? I saw your
but
review.
yeah.
Yeah.
So but the thing is that like deaths per energy created, nuclear is like right there with solar panels. It's like it's one of the safest forms of energy, in terms of just like how many people have died versus how much energy it's created.
Right.
People die from solar energy falling off of rooftops installing solar panels. The wind hits, you're holding this big old thing, and the wind hits,
Right.
and people get thrown off the window, the roof. Um, anyways, but the point is that
Fusion.
yeah, fusion to fission is if fusion. So this is what you gotta do for fusion. You're basically trying to create conditions not exactly the same as the sun, way hotter than the sun.
Hmm.
So we can't make fusion the way the sun does, because we don't have that amount of pressure. Like the sun, the pressures inside the sun are so insane that the temperature comparatively doesn't need to be as hot as we need to get on Earth. We need to make the temperature ridiculously hot. So it's like 150 million degrees Celsius, which is like,
Wow.
I don't know, man. Who cares? Like these numbers, whatever. Way more than that in Fahrenheit.
Okay.
Um, that's the temperature you need to
And
fuse
yeah.
hydrogen atoms.
So obviously, just to do that, to get the
So
temperature, you need energy already to do that. Right.
Crazy amounts of energy.
Yeah.
So then this is what happened earlier this year. This is what happened. This was like our big, welcome to 2023. The future is near moment, was that for the first time ever, they made a fusion reaction where they got more energy out. So we've been doing fusion. We can do it, but we just can't sustain it and make it in any way reasonable, energy in to energy out wise. Because if you're putting more energy in than you're getting out, then what the hell are you doing?
Exactly. Right.
It's not,
Right.
it's not a reasonable thing to do. So this is the first time that in the reaction itself, you got more energy out than we put in through lasers. So they created that temperature and that pressure situation with lasers.
Dr. Evil's been talking about this for years, man. What took so long? I'm confused.
Absolutely. I mean, they tried it on sharks, but it was hard to get the sharks, to get to aim the lasers correctly
Yeah.
without taking each other out by accident.
It's fucking sharks, man.
It's hard to train sharks, man.
Yeah.
Very hard to train sharks.
But the lasers we got, okay.
The lasers we got. And so, yeah, so like 192 lasers all aiming at this unbelievably small little target with that's got hydrogen inside of it. And that hydrogen became helium and released some energy. The hydrogen particles fused and became helium and released some energy. And we got more energy out than we put in that moment. But the net energy, so like the bigger question of like powering up these lasers and running the whole experiment, we're still way in the negative, way in the negative. Right?
Wow.
And then scaling this thing up is nuts. And people think the laser thing is going to be hard to scale up. People think the more likely way that we're going to scale up is using magnets. But just to give you a sense of how difficult this situation is like basically the reason why you need magnets is you can't, at that temperature, at 150 million degrees, you can't have anything touching anything else because everything on Earth would melt at that temperature, right? So you can't like put it on a table and then heat it up to 150 million. It's just like,
wow,
it just
that's
vanishes.
interesting. These
vanish.
Logistics.
So you have to like hold it in air.
You
have to, or like, I think it's in a vacuum actually. It has to be there without touching anything. So the way they do this is with super powered magnets. Now the crazy thing about super powered magnets is for them to reach that kind of power, they have to be at one of the lowest temperatures on Earth. So they have to be at like negative 180 degrees or whatever it is. And so
the magnets
in the
have to
same
be
building,
freezing.
yeah. So in the same building, you've got a temperature hotter than the sun and the lowest temperature we can make on Earth. And you're doing both of these in the same building. So basically fusion, as I've had it explained to me, is like physicists love it, like the scientists, like they love this shit.
Yeah.
And the engineers hate it.
Right. Because
like they're like, this is impossible.
Right.
What are you asking me to do here?
It's where these two things like collide, and you're dealing with atoms, by the way. So even as you explain this, right, and it sounds really complex and impossible, in my mind the whole time I'm imagining like a nickel on a table. That's been helping me think about it. But when you take that away and you take both those things away and realize we're talking about something like an atom, whatever that is, it's like what the fuck?
Yeah, no, atoms are way smaller than you think they are too.
Yeah.
They're way, our heads can't really get around. There's like billions of them in your thumb or whatever. It's like it's like whoa. So anyways, I don't know, Billy.
So all that.
I mean, I don't want to sound all negative because like maybe this is the future. Maybe we'll get there. The challenge for me is like we actually don't know how to build. Like to build the fusion reactor and the fission reactor, like to build these things like we don't know how to do that without the fossil fuels, and they're gonna run out at some point. / we got to get off them because we're cooking the planet, by burning them and putting all that carbon in the air. So it's like we got to figure this out quick, and we got to figure out how to build these things without the fossil fuels. Anyways, it's complicated.
Very.
Maybe it's the future. Maybe the future is gonna be beautiful. If I had to bet, I'm betting on No, maybe I shouldn't share this.
I didn't even ask you to bet. You want to say your bet? Say your fucking bet,
No,
Jesse.
I know that, like, on your plan for our conversation, there was, like, love and hope in 2023 or something like that, and it'll be hard to get back out of this well and
uh,
up to that point if
man,
I go ahead and finish that sentence.
yeah, man. You might as well. You might as well. We have to deal with the beauty of the moment as well as the incredible absurdity of the moment as well as the doom of the moment. You know what I mean? Like it's all
Mhm.
here, it's all true, and I think we're like everyone is kind of navigating that truth. That we're balancing all of these. Like we're in the middle of a what do they call it? A triple pandemic nonsense or something. Apparently, there's like 3 strains moving around out here in Maryland, from what I've been
Oh,
hearing.
really?
Um, you're talking about ecological crises. We've got economic crises. We've got insane political crises. We've got a communication crisis, by the way. A lot of people forget this one. I'm gonna put that out there.
Yeah.
We are all that is true, and yet we're fucking here, and we're dealing. And your challenge is that you're looking straight at the thing. While a lot of us get to kind of live and do other things, you're looking straight at the problem deeply, closely, down to the atomic level, wondering these deeper questions like a lot of the time. So I know that
I
weighs on you.
and I really struggle on, like, whether or not it's a good idea to encourage other people to do the same. But it's not like you said, it's not like there's a lot of people with their focus on positive things right now anyways either, right? Like I, to get myself out of this headspace, went to see some stand-up comedy last night, and
You want to see what?
some some stand-up comedy,
Okay.
and some guy made a joke about Andrew Tate, and I turned to my buddy beside me, and I was like, "Who is that?"
Oh man.
And it's like, "What? You don't know who Andrew Tate is?" Like, "No, I haven't been following much lately, I don't really know what's going on." And then, so then I gotta look into that. So then I, spent half an hour today looking into that, and then it was like, well, alright, so maybe maybe things aren't so bleak in my world just looking at the apocalypse and stuff. Maybe it is actually a more hopeful place to put my time and energy, and maybe I should encourage others to come over to where I'm hanging out.
Wait, Andrew Tate reinvigorated your hope for humanity? Can figure that.
No, it just made me feel like my particular, like, corner of apocalyptic studies,
Okay.
of looking at it from the, like, energy and ecology and this sort of stuff, um, might actually not be as horrible. But there might be more horrible places I could put my time.
Interesting. Oh yeah. Oh, that's for sure. I mean,
More depressing
there's all more
places.
depressing. Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something I had to find, man. I find that I was going through several different versions of. First off, thanks for explaining that in fewer than 3 days. Not only fewer than 3 days, fewer than 20 minutes. That was really good, man. That's impressive, Jess. Really
Cool,
impressive.
thank you.
But and I feel like I learned several things along that whole thing, and different ways of thinking about it actually. So thanks for that. But coming out of like, my critique on communication and on language and on the ways we communicate with each other, the ways we fail to show love to each other. I think this is all kind of connected. I think that our communication systems being so poorly constructed, our ways of like seeing each other, got me in deep depression. So
Yeah.
2020 was a period of 2020, 2021, man. I was struggling, B. I was trying
Mhm.
to figure it all out, and I was looking straight at these things, and I'm seeing, from the media perspective, the paucity of meaningful discourse, which was and actually, the explosion of other shit. And I'm like, ugh. So to hear your thing, I totally get it, and I would say you gotta. To me, I try to dip in and out, Jess. You gotta dip in and out. That's the key to it, man. You can't look forever.
Yeah,
Yeah, duck in, bob and
that's
weave,
it.
man.
Go in, pop, get out.
That's it, man.
Yeah.
Because it'll make you crazy.
Mhm.
And you're
Yeah,
not.
that's fair.
You're like dead serious. He's like, yeah, yeah, things are
No,
rough.
but no, I think it's a good metaphor. I think it's reasonable. You know, I've I think it's also like, you gotta put your just in general, and I'm saying this, I'm not really doing it lately, and this is probably part of my problem.
Mm.
Um, which is, to have your pride and your skills and everything in a few different buckets. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, I
And
totally agree with that. I
to
think
have a
that's
few
key.
different things going on in your life that you can feel proud of, um, if possible,
Yeah, of
and
course, you're one of the
or
most
that
renaissance.
give you meaning.
Yeah, that you feel like one of those people, right?
Less and less, man. I don't know. My
Mm.
jump shot's not going in as much as it used to.
You're getting old, bruh.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
gotta.
Which is when the jump shot's got to get better because I can't really
That's
get to the
true.
rim.
That's true.
As or at least I can get there. I just don't have the ball in my hand anymore when I get up there. Um, but
Damn.
yeah.
Well,
So
um,
sorry, was I the answer was supposed to be, oh yeah, 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 I figured it out totally. Yeah, yeah. With age, I just keep adding more and more buckets of skills. No, I'm just kidding. Um,
nah, man. I think it's funny because when you first started, you warned me that like if you go down this path, you could get to this point where you're just like, oh, kind of sucky. Like, where the fuck do we go from here, kind of thing. And I was like, nah, let's
mhm,
go for it, Jess. And yeah, that's a kind of, I mean, it's just an all-encompassing kind of issue, you know. But
mhm.
so then the other question then is like faith and hope, Jess. You're telling me that I guess you're in a moment right now that feels a little darker, but you've had these before, and have you
Mhm.
come out of them? And do you have a sense that you'll come out of this one?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, everything's waves,
Yeah,
I guess. And I think people. One of my theories of like why you come out of things in general is because your brain gets bored of them. Like, at some point, your brain starts. I'm just feeling it already a bit. My brain gets bored of kind of thinking the same thoughts over and over again. Kind of like, nah, we're not gonna do
I
this again.
totally get that.
This is silly. Um, so I count on my brain to get bored with apocalyptic thoughts pretty soon.
Yeah.
That's gonna be the force. I mean, I'm gonna like actually try to use some free will and push myself into other stuff. I've already started doing that, but yeah, I would say I would say that's what gives me hope
Yeah,
is my brain getting bored with the negative thoughts.
I totally can relate to that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. And more, I find like what helps me is to be able to just sit with that,
Mm,
rather than to require myself to find hope somewhere. Like earlier on, you were trying to find balance in the world, and it can help to not force that, to just be like, okay, this really sucks right now.
yeah.
And it's a preoccupation, but I think you're right because I wrote something on Facebook today about consciousness, and I was saying how kind of everything kind of rests on top of consciousness, and I do think that all of these crises we're describing, they've existed in different ways, at different forms. If maybe not this particular one, but like, the crisis of calories. That our ancestors had to figure out calories, and that was a crisis. And I would say
Like to feed themselves.
to feed themselves
Yeah,
enough
yeah.
to have energy to get through the next like
Mhm.
day, and I don't
Which
know,
is
man.
crazy, which is why this is why we think sugar and fat are good. Like this is why we like them. Is because like most of our history as a species, it was like the humans that ate the sugar when it was there and ate the fat when it was there and ate all of it
Hmm.
when they could, like survived to procreate, or were healthier or lived longer or whatever. Um, and that's why we find them delicious. That's trippy because now it's doing the opposite. But we might be going back to that soon.
Now it's doing the
But
opposite. Tell me what you mean.
well, in the sense that like because now we've got grocery stores and Krispy Kremes and all this stuff kind of like at our that like most people or not maybe not most people but a lot of people in the world can afford to get as much fat and sugar as they want at any moment.
Right.
Um, that like now this is what they said. It's like now there's I don't know if people like talk about this stuff medically, but there's more obese people in like places like North America than there are hungry people, right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
And so
and people kind of point to that as a positive. Like this is an example of sort of the success of capitalism, let's say, right?
well, it's also just that like I mean, like I'm not an expert on this stuff, and I'm sure whatever I'm going to say is going to be blind and wrong in a bunch of ways. But like probably shouldn't have brought this here. But just to finish that thought, it's just that like the that 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 evolutionary aspect or characteristic that we have of finding sugar and fat delicious, and so that there was bred into us because it was to our advantage to eat as much of it as we could when we could get our hands on it,
right.
is now hurting us like that. But evolution takes so long to happen that we're trying to handle it culturally by like having public service announcements and stuff,
Mm,
and say like, don't listen to your brain,
mm, mm,
or
mm,
hey brain,
mm.
like and we're going to use the one part of your brain to tell the other part of the brain to shut up, tell the
Right,
reptile brain shut up, like um
right.
anyway, it's just like
But you're pointing
I
to
don't know how
something
this
that
fits into your consciousness. That your consciousness thing is interesting because like a lot of our emotions come from these like weird old evolutionary stuff, and then we try to fight it logically.
exactly, exactly, and you're pointing to something interesting too about I think, um, again coming back to language and linguistics for me, right? Like I see a problem that the words we used in the English language, um, like a lot of this pronoun conversation. Not that we have to go down this path, but like the English language rests on like it feeds the sense that we're all kind of separate people. The way we categorize ourselves and the way we separate our notions of these categories and the narratives we build around different categories, whether it's gender, obviously racial categories, national categories. Um, these things like operate very subtly in our processes as we assess the world when we make judgments about whatever we're observing in the world, right? We care more about category X than we do category Y based on all these things in our language and the way we talk about each other. Um, that's something I've been dealing with recently, and I hope I explained that well. But do you follow what I'm saying there?
Well, say a bit more. What aspect of it have you been struggling with
I've been
or been thinking
struggling with
about?
the fact that trying to articulate our understanding that, for instance, Jesse, you're a Canadian citizen, white man, right? And I'm a American citizen, black man, and that these categories carry a great deal more purchase and weight than they probably should in our interactions with each other, in our understanding of things. People would describe me in a shorthand using these labels and could describe you in a shorthand using these labels, and this creates unnecessary tension, if we were more aware of our connectivity and the trillions of little ways biologically that we are the same and that we deal with the same, we have the same conditions for ideal temperatures, for life, and, you know, what is it? We need routine for dietary routines. Like these are deeply meaningful connections, and yet some of these divisions hold major sway in the things that we pay attention to as we talk about each other. And I just see that. I see that in the news media. I see that in our conversations on social media. And I see that as we think about myself. And that's just been something I've been thinking of. So as you're dealing with like the old fossil fuels and old energy sources, like I've been thinking how we sit on old concepts and language,
Mhm.
and we can't unravel that without some real work. Um, okay, hope that made sense.
Yeah, I mean it's something we've talked about before, but I see it as like a real challenge in the sense that like we use the term like deconstructing. So if you're going to deconstruct something like race, like how do you do it in a way that's not actually constructing it again, or you know what I mean, and or reinforcing it? you know?
Right.
How
Right.
do, how do you how do you know that your hammer swings are taking it down and not building it up? Um, that's a real question for me
Yeah. To
because
me. To yeah.
especially I think about like some of my friends right now who have young children. Um, yeah, what do you tell a 6-year-old about race right now, for example? You
Yeah.
know what do you tell them that it is? What do you tell them? What's its meaning? You know, it used to be like I grew up in a time where I was told it's meaningless and it's a thing of the past and we're moving past it. That was what but even though it clearly wasn't true,
Right.
you know what I mean? That we had moved past it. There's a lot of lie. There's a lot of bullshit there.
See that. But that's
But but it was a clear message you could get your head around.
right.
You know what I mean? It like Martin Luther King's message is pretty clear. And you can explain it in a couple sentences.
Yeah.
Um, whereas like I don't know I don't know what the couple sentences would be right now.
I think that might be the problem, man. I don't think a couple sentences is the goal necessarily. We have
Yeah,
really
you're right.
complex things. You somehow described from oxen to nuclear fission in 30 minutes, but most of us that shouldn't be. Most of us like I think that
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
especially on that. Like I think the way that works is you talk about it as a historical artifact. You talk about it as you talk about the historical manifestation, and you talk about it as a social construction,
Hmm.
and you talk about it as a social construction and how it was socially constructed and how it manifested itself and how it caused harm and how it propped up this and that, and so yeah, I mean, if you're getting into a deep historical thing, then it will take much longer. But I think you could talk about it in a couple of sentences that this is a social construction, historical artifact that still has meaningful purchase in our moment.
Hmm.
So um, we have to talk about it that way. And to me, honestly, put it in the same category with the social artifact of like conservative womanhood, or manhood, that men, the assumptions that we have around these categories, they all exist. They're all made up, you know. Um,
Hmm.
the assumptions that just a generation ago, women, like, the purpose of a woman's life is to have a child and to get married. That she doesn't have her own career aspirations, and women aren't supposed to be at the forefront of anything like that. We've had to break that down, but it comes from the same place. It comes from, to me, the same attempts to categorize people, and then once you can delineate a category, then you can set up norms and legal frameworks around these categories.
Hmm.
So you got to break it down, and you've got to realize that we have to treat each other as humans. And yeah, hopefully that 6-year-old's like, yeah, I get it. That makes sense. Like, they don't deal with that shit. Well, no, six might be too late already.
Hmm.
This world's wild, man. Back to that.
Yeah, I brought up sick because I was babysitting a 6-year-old last night. It's my friend's kid,
Mm.
and it's really good for the soul to hang out with a 6-year-old every once in a while. I say every once in a while. I think to hang out with a 6-year-old every day is bad for the soul, probably. But every once in a while, like you get that uncle distance,
Yeah, I get
you
that.
know.
I get that huge, man. I got two nieces now, and it's huge. I see them every Wednesday, and they're excited to see me, and they're like laughing and screaming, and we spend a whole day, and then I go home.
Yeah.
Woo! And it's but they're
Yeah.
really fun. And what's great about being a six, is it the age 6, or like for mine, they're 2 and 1, and they're just super inquisitive. They're always trying to figure shit out. They're like, that's what I see, little baby scientists, and they're
Mm.
testing out gravity, and they're falling down, and they're throwing things, and then they look at it on the floor, and The 2-year-old is now asking like interesting questions, and I
Mm.
think that's really cool.
They're figuring out the rules of the game.
Figuring out the rules of the game. Yeah, I guess that's one way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
That's one way to put it, Jess. Yeah, man. What else do we got here? I got written down art and meaning. We talked about, since we're in a kind of an interesting funk and able to sit in it and let it be what it is. We talked about depression on an episode of an episode of Where Is Now,
Mm.
and you brought up, which philosopher was that?
I can't remember what
Um,
when we were talking about depression.
oh, we talked about depression, and we talked about ways to get out of it. I think it was Frankl.
Oh,
Frankl.
it was our first ever episode. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Viktor Frankl.
Viktor Frankl. And one of the things
Yeah.
that Viktor Frankl talked about, apart from like looking for having a forward goal, but like art, creating something,
Mm-hmm.
has that been helpful for you, Jess?
That's what he sees like three categories of how you can find meaning. Because for him, uh, the fulfillment, positivity can only come out of like a positive headspace can only come out of knowing your meaning. That's the primary drive. And so you wake up in the morning knowing what you're up to, and so he has sort of like three categories, and one of them is love, is through love, like actively loving another person and trying to bring the best for them, or multiple people, or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of care and genuine caring and active caring for people. And then one of them is he was a survivor of the Holocaust, and he talked about in a situation. Yeah, the other one was bringing something into the world, creating something. It doesn't necessarily have to be art. Could be building something, could
Right.
be making something possible, whatever. Logistically arranging something, whatever it might be, but like being responsible for something positive in the world,
Mm-hmm.
that you bring into the world, either by yourself or with others. And then the third one is, if you don't have access to the first two, it's like surviving with dignity, or like surviving your situation with dignity. And that's what he took from his time in the camps. He spent 4 years in the work camps and the death camps of Nazi Germany.
That's crazy.
And yeah, so that's in brief a resume. Resume, that's French. um a summary of Franklism.
Yeah. Yeah. I've come back to that episode a couple times, but
Mm,
and it's good stuff.
mm.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, you were on the stoicism.
Yeah. Stoicism.
How's that working out for you?
More generally, in times of difficulty, stoicism has a similar thing. It's less of a bullet point sort of like approach to what can be done. It's more of a, look at what is, and accept what is, and come to accept what is out of control, and come to a place of understanding of what is in control, and then to commit yourself to that is, if you can identify that, and it'll be different for each of us. I've actually had an evolution in my thought on this, but it's like I like thinking of it this way: like, whoever is looking out, we're all going to have a different answer to this question of what we can control in whatever that situation is. And I love it because, like Frankl said, the creation of something is part of that. It's like within this purview of something you can control, and something that you can engage in. And again, if we're all creatives in this way, so in any situation, to really be aware of that creative potential and to lean into it, continue to grow your understanding of what your creative potential is. It gives you more options and more capabilities, I guess, in the moment. So I think those two things overlap pretty well, as ways to deal with difficulty. Real talk.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I remember my beef with stoicism was that it didn't seem to have much of like a ethical core to it. It seemed like you just, whatever your goal is, just here's the ticket to ride. Like this is how you achieve your goals, and that could apply to somebody doing something really wonderful, um, or it could apply to Hitler, and they could all be Stoics. I
Yeah.
don't know. So for me, so somebody like Frankl, like the existentialists would say, because they're basically, I mean, Frankl wasn't really, but most of these existentialists were atheists or agnostics, and they tried to figure out how to ground morality without God. Um, and so they came up with the idea of, they took from Kant, I think, the categorical imperative. And Billy, you're like, this is right up you did your master's in this whole field. So
It's my thing, man.
you correct me if I got this wrong, but
I think
more
you're
or
doing
less
well.
it's like
I do want to stop you on one thing when you said that Hitler could be a Stoic. I think, and I kind of nodded along, but I shouldn't have. I think that you're pointing to something. You said that it doesn't have a ethical grounding,
I think I said core,
a
yeah, or
core. I
grounding,
think
yeah.
what you're saying, because it really is a focus on the self at the end of the
Hmm.
day. So I don't think that, I think that you can, Hitler might, or some other bad person might take premises and techniques for grounding self and applying oneself through some kind of a difficult effort, good, bad, or otherwise. You're right about that. But I think that
Hmm.
Stoicism grounds itself in a humanist ethic. So it isn't straightforwardly about doing good things, but um, it wants to say that if you're well grounded and whole and a stoic, and you approach the world with stoicism, then what you're doing is you're also like really deeply intertwined with the sense that all of us are in the same condition, and so I don't think us like you can't like the bad guys who want to claim stoicism. We don't want them. We're not accepting them. Okay, and then
Okay, but
but
one
at
of
the
your
same time,
prophets,
go ahead.
one of your prophets is Marcus Aurelius,
See,
right?
that's the thing, and the guy, he's not a prophet of mine, but he's like one of
Well, I'm
the
saying a
he's like a
Stoic, whatever
face.
you
He's
want
like
to
a
call it,
face of that
Stoic.
thing. He's like a face of
Sound
like the Greek historians who got to keep the names of their lines going. Like a lot of times I wonder about like African mythology and philosophy, and I see how it exists, and I have to go to different parts of the internet to catch it, but that obviously that's just a historical anthropological, like history and power get to have this person associate himself with, like Marcus Aurelius, with stoicism, and we don't know enough. We don't know enough about what was,
Mhm.
how did people cope, and how did enslaved peoples in America, apart from their Christian faith, what kinds of philosophies did they come up with other than just endurance? You see, I don't know
Mhm.
where that text is. I might need to do some work, but anyway, yeah, no, we don't do
Nice
Hitler.
dodge on the Marcus Aurelius question, though, Billy. I appreciate that. Yeah, yeah. It's sort of like, well, I don't, yeah, well, yeah, he did, go around slaughtering entire peoples. I remember when we did that episode, I had the list of like different nations whose names we'd never heard before because Marcus Aurelius had wiped them out with his armies.
Yeah.
You know, waking up every morning, doing his Stoic credo, and finding his power, and recognizing what is within his control and not within his control, and going out there and getting it done
this
and
is
being
this is the thing I
effective.
have for like that guy Daily Stoic, who I forget his name, but he does this. He's like the most like popular celebrity Stoic, I think, in the United
Right.
States right now. Does Daily Stoic YouTube page and all that. Not only does he frequently mention Marcus Aurelius, but like he'll interview Donald Rumsfeld or interview like the head of the DOD or something like this as part of his like video sequence on leadership.
Profiles in leadership. Yeah, I'm
Exactly,
sure.
leadership.
I'm sure
Exactly.
it's something like that. I didn't even
So
know that's what it was called, but I was sure it was something
that's
like that.
exactly it.
Yeah.
And
Great people.
I don't know him, right? I don't know what's going on there. But even this guy who seems to have a philosophical sort of ethical grounding, like his whole life is around this stoicism stuff. He doesn't seem to understand why you don't want to interview the head of the DoD, or
Right.
how those things don't compute. So I don't know. My thing, like I said, it's evolved, and I'm a stoic, but I'm something more. These are words. These are labels, man. I'm all kinds of things, including like a sick humanist, man. So
Sick humanist.
sick humanist.
But this thing, so how do you so what like but like what do you base the humanist thing in? So like that's what I like from the existentialists, was this idea of like trying to judge yourself as like, okay, ask yourself, if everybody acted like me, what kind of world would we be in?
Right.
It gets
Exactly.
complicated with the energy thing because I don't know what my energy expenditure is, um, but it's probably higher than the average human on
Hmm.
Earth. So if everybody acted like we'd be using more energy,
Yeah.
you know. Anyways, it's a tough one, but I'm not saying I've totally figured it out. But I think it's an interesting framework to ground some kind of like morality that doesn't count on a god figure to tell you what's right and wrong.
Right. Well, where I'm at with it now is a true, like, real. I dip in and out of it, but I have a real sense. I can sometimes intellectualize it and explain it, but more than that, I have
Mm.
a gut feeling, an intuition that we are all truly the same, and that we're the same in so many ways through our customs and our laws and our. We have a shared predicament on this floating rock on the earth. We have including the ecological predicament. Um,
Mhm.
we are our languages, our needs for communication, and we're literally one in all these ways, including, as I'm saying, like if you try to zoom out far enough to see all of it, we all operate as a unit, the way that bees operate with flowers, um, and that they need each other, and that the oxygen and the carbon dioxide and just everything we do is part of a broader thing and ripple effects of the choices we all make, and that if we were able to, none of us can do it. If we were able to properly calculate all of it, absolutely everything, that is something like what God is. Like we're talking about God there,
Mhm.
and that's all of us. It's us as people. It's our clothes. It's our ideas. It's our concepts. Our words. Our actions. It's your headphones. It's the computer. All the things we created. Web3, NFTs, blah blah blah. President Bush. All these, like all of it. I don't know
Is
why I
God?
picked. I don't know why I pitched President. What was that?
You got NFTs, my headphones, and George Bush Jr. are God.
Yeah, the entire complex construction
The whole creation.
of this thing is these are all localized sort of imprints of what is that
Mm.
and because we are sentient beings, you, Jesse, are carrying a localized imprint, story, a narrative, a perspective that is one slice, one sliver of what is, and I carry something also, and the only way that we can transfer it, it seems, is through language and words and images and stuff like this, but that the whole thing is one entity, and so then it makes me say, how do I carry myself with that knowledge? I need to be aware that I'm harming myself if I harm something in the external space, and to be mindful of that.
Mm.
That the notion of external and internal is a concept. That itself is a concept.
So does that involve the future? Like, are those that which will come into existence in the future equally part of this story?
They absolutely are. The future and the present is all. It's all one thing. There is no future. Future is a concept.
Okay.
It's always an ever moving present, and
Hmm.
so that's all. That's all part of it. And that's how when I was growing up, the way they talked about God was that way. He was Omni-time, whatever that one is.
Omni-chrono? I have no idea.
So
here's the thing. So if you, all right, so we do have, an inability as the limited human minds that we have to grasp this thing you're talking about.
correct.
'Cause I generally agree with you that there's like an overwhelming connection amongst all things, amongst past, future, and present, and over space and time and all this stuff, and that we just can't grasp. We see ourselves, we've evolved or whatever to see ourselves as an individual, and then to see those closest to us in family ties or community or whatever as more important, and then those who are alive today are more important than those who are alive in the future. And even if we don't say that out loud, it's like our actions show that that's how we operate, right?
Right.
And it's hard to imagine operating differently. So given that that is like our limitations based on how our brains work or whatever, if you could put all the information about everything that's happening on this planet into a unbelievably powerful supercomputer with an AI, and you just tell it, listen, we're willing to trade in our personal freedoms in return for, or not personal freedom, whatever. We are willingly and with our free will deciding to ask you to tell us what to do. Like, we want you to optimize for these things. You know, we want equality, equality, freedom. We don't want out of control global warming. We don't, like, we don't want war. We don't want these things. And we're giving you, and then here's all the data about everything we know.
Right.
And can you please just run that program and then spit out to each and every one of us like what we have to do tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day.
You think that would matter?
Would you do it?
Would I do what? If I could do that thing, the computer thing you're talking about?
Would you vote for that? Let's say we had like a global referendum. It's like,
even if
we can
voted
continue.
for it.
We can continue with the chaos of having the humans with their pathetic brains, like try to figure out how to do this.
Right.
Or we've got these like really intelligent AI, and
how long would it take? How long would it take the AI to compute all that? This is a computer.
Like a second.
Oh, so this is a serious computer here.
Yeah.
Well, then the computer is itself.
Okay, a day, whatever.
The computer is itself performing a function of this kind of a godlike sort of mathematical equation. Then.
Yeah, except instead of 10 commandments, it's like you're gonna get up at this time. You're gonna, it's like an unbelievably detailed, like 450,000 commandments.
Well, then that would be terrible, right? No, that you would, even if we voted for it, I don't think it would do anything. We would have this and then we mail everyone like a
but what if you knew?
What
if you knew that if everybody did this?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if everybody just
how many people would do it?
And like we would put in there like, don't make it unreasonable. We would still have some free time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It would be like, it wouldn't be unreasonable.
Yeah.
That would be put into the things we're optimizing for.
So it's funny because you're pointing to like us, right? The citizenry and stuff we would have to do, but like what would it give Joe Biden? What would it give
would find out what he's like, what would be the best use for his time, which I'm pretty sure wouldn't be president. I'm pretty sure he wouldn't be selected by a supercomputer who was weighing everybody's capacities and stuff. I don't know where Joe Biden would end up. I imagine he'd be working in service somewhere where he could just tell jokes and whatever, and smile and be charming or whatever he's good at. I don't. It's not clear what he's good at to me, but
yeah.
He'd be working in service. I'm sure he'd be working in retail or something.
Abercrombie and Fitch. He'd be.
Yeah, or a gas station or something. I don't know.
That's what's up.
Yeah,
I mean, you just answered it, man. Like, we would have this incredible thing. It would be a little bit creepy. We certainly don't want it like enforced and everyone has to do this thing, right? That's not what you're asking. You're simply saying we'd have this incredible guideline because the notion of free will is important to you, I believe. I'm wondering.
Yeah. I mean, it is. but there's other things that are important to me too. And so so I don't know. I'm like I'm actually, this thing I was describing to you earlier, like shit could get really nasty on this planet. And uh there's like a lot of us out here, and there's a lot of weapons, and there's a lot of stuff. And I mean, like, obviously if you went to somebody in the middle of a war and was like, hey, after like horrible things are happening to them, so this thing, you're like, hey, listen, if you could go back a year and sign up to have an AI spit you out a program of like what you got to do every day, it's not going to be unreasonable. That's going to be like according to your strengths and your capacities and whatever, and it's going to lead to a society of abundance and stability and loveliness, and there's not going to be a war.
Yeah.
Would you sign up for it? I don't know. You're the master of the hypothetical ethical conundrums.
It's a good one, and we're right in it. You're pretty good too. This is it. I mean, this is that thing. I think it would just play out where we have, a very complex set of commandments that
Mm,
maybe we don't call it that. Maybe the AI doesn't call itself that, but it would just.
right.
I don't think it would be adhered to. I think that we would still meet up against human selfishness and political bullshit, particularly the political bullshit. The
Yeah.
people, this thing wouldn't get the time of day. AI would be used in a way to, not to subvert all the political bullshit. AI would be used to entrench it, in terms of that. So, that's
Yeah, no,
that.
it's a crazy hypothetical. Like,
It is.
it's I'm thinking it would have to involve like massive forms of control. You know what I mean? It's like
Mm.
whoever got tasked with cleaning the toilets. I mean, it's possible robots are doing most of the jobs that people don't want to do. And actually, it could be that the computer spits out. Actually, you guys are working way too much. Um, we can rearrange all these resources in a way that people get a pretty decent life, hang out with their families, don't have to worry about much, and work
The
like
issue is the issue is
10
too,
hours,
Jess.
10 hours a week.
Jess. So let's say we were actually able to get some people to do this, right?
Yeah.
And or a lot of people to do this, and we got it to happen for a generation. All it would take is a generation later. You know, you're handing some 5-year-old like their life's purpose, charted out for them. No, sir. And they don't understand the gravity. Like, you're over here very concerned with things, and you painted you gave a very stark thing about someone out of war, so they have this
Hmm.
backstory. But the human condition really is we're so short sighted, and again, the perspective is so limited. Who are you, robot AI thing? Like, they don't even respect
I'm the one that's going to help you
they
with
don't even
that.
they don't even respect that the AI got them to the generation, it's because of the
Yeah.
AI's joints.
That they got born into the greatest possible of all worlds
Right.
because of this AI. Yeah, it's true. You're right.
They don't respect it.
Um,
They don't want anything to do with it. They're like they're, you know, they're rebels. And by high school, forget about it.
well, I think we'll handle it the way all human generations have handled it, which is just by like going off on diatribes about how the youth don't understand
That's right. That's right.
and trying to
That's right.
beat them into submission with words.
Did you see the Have you seen the movie The Maze, or the series of movies The Maze?
No.
Bro, I would highly suggest it. It's one of my
I've
favorite
seen David
trilogies.
Bowie's Labyrinth. That's one of the creepiest ass films ever made.
I haven't seen that one. I don't know about that one. But
Yeah.
The Maze, man, I'm gonna go with like 2010 or something, and they've come out with 3 of them. Long story, lot of potential spoilers, but let me just say they go through this epic thing where these kids find themselves in one predicament, and they can keep learning how expansive it actually is, right? Over 3 movies,
Mhm.
multiple people die, blah blah blah, fucking wars and all this crazy stuff, and everything's going crazy. You really fall in love with these characters, and you hope the best for them, and they figure it out, and they partner up, and they create other groups to fight the corporate thing, and da da da. And then they win at the end of the third movie, and then you have this like slow motion sequence of like people happy and kind of laughing, and everyone who had survived. Some of them are on crutches, and then they do a little burial thing to show all the people that didn't make it, and then they have this they erect this massive stone with the names of all the people that you knew from the first movie that were there, that you fucking were excited about, that didn't make it to the end of this third movie, and you watch them, and then
The martyrs.
huh?
The
What'd you say?
martyrs.
Yeah, the martyrs.
The
And
martyrs.
so then the guy, one of the leaders, says this thing, and he says he wants to honor them, and then the movie ends, and I was overwhelmed with the sense that all it would take was one generation later, some really cool fucking kid is gonna pee on that memorial just to fucking do it, you know? Because he doesn't know anyone on that memorial, and he doesn't care. And
Right.
I was like, dag, and it just struck me, and I was like, dag, am I this horrific cynic, or am I being honest about the human situation? I don't know.
We had that situation in Ottawa, like not that long ago, where somebody, I think it's happened a couple times. Somebody peeing on the tomb of the unknown soldier, and it's like, guy's like, I don't know who the unknown soldier is. It's like, what? It's like, why are you making such a big deal if he's unknown anyways? Like, he's got no idea what a war is or any of this stuff. He's just looking for a quiet place to pee, and on that night, nobody was making a big deal about the unknown soldier and hanging
That's
out
right.
there and
It's probably
doing a pilgrimage or anything. So he peed.
seems like
But
the least offensive place to pee, right? That's crazy.
it's a quiet place at night on a Saturday. But
Yikes.
that's funny what you're saying. I mean, is it a common feature of how Billy sees things to ruin endings of movies, or is that like you just
Listen,
experimenting
go
with that
see,
now?
go see. Yo, I lost it. I told myself I wasn't gonna do spoilers, and then I completely fucking.
Just sort
No,
of
no.
like,
Actually, you know what? I didn't tell you anything. Actually, you
oh
think you
really?
know something? Go see it from the beginning.
Yeah, we'll see. You know what's good? You know what's worse than spoiling a movie is spoiling a movie and then saying you didn't spoil it, and then encouraging people to go. So that's usually 3 parts. Like, so you're encouraging people. Was it like 9 hours we're talking about here? Like
It's a
seven
great
or eight
9 hours.
hours.
You're gonna love it. You
So
can do it in
not
a weekend, and
all
you're gonna
right.
love it.
Okay,
All
and
right.
I'm not at the end gonna be like, Billy, you're sure? Okay,
No, no, no. A lot of
all right.
parallels,
I
man.
do like what you're saying though about yeah. It's crazy. Nobody chooses to come into this world. The next generation is going to show up and try to make meaning of it all, and you're going to have all your archetypes. You're going to have your rebels are going to be one of them. You're going to have a certain percentage of the population is going to be rebellious by nature, and it's going to be have that instinct to pee on whatever the older generation holds sacred. All and the chaos will reign again. I have no doubt that's going to be a thing. But I think the earth, we owe it to the earth to restrain our freedom for at least one generation and hand over the reins to the silicon-based life form for a little bit and let the
Wow.
computers.
I never thought I'd see the day Jesse's arguing for an AI takeover. That's interesting.
I'm arguing for a delegation of our decision making to AI, to a benevolent AI that we will program optimizing for all the good things that
Mm,
we'll be able to agree on, certainly,
of course,
that should be
exactly. That'll be
optimized. Yeah.
easy. That'll be easy,
Yeah.
Jess.
The debate over who programs the AI will go super smoothly, I have no doubt.
Right. Yeah, man.
I'm sure
Well,
we can come up with a clever way to do that
damn.
using AI.
That's all. Jess, let me let's wrap it here, man. But before we wrap, I want to ask just what are you leaving behind in 2022?
Hopefully a lot of like uh non-existent immunity because I got really sick in December. Apparently, I was one of these people who I guess hadn't been exposed to enough viruses over the last 2 years, and so got like the worst flu of my life. Knocked
Really?
me out for like 2 weeks. So I'm hoping
When
to
was
have
that?
a more resistant. This is like just this in December
Wow. Okay.
2022. So 2023 is a year with a much more vibrant and populated immunity hopefully.
I love that.
Okay, what else? What else am I leaving behind? That's probably not what you're hoping for. You're hoping for something. Yeah, I feel like there's things I want to leave behind that have clearly, as January 10th, I haven't left them behind yet. But I would like to not drag, like, I'm clearly going through a phase where I'm integrating some pretty negative potential futures into my awareness, of what's going on with this work I'm doing around energy and energy transition. And we haven't got into the economics of it all either. It's pretty dark, but I'm hoping to leave behind, like, I got into just narrowly focusing on this stuff in 2022, and I want to re-expand. They do this exercise that I was taught to do with when people who are like suicidal, for example. And I've had to do this once with somebody, where you put you put their face in the corner of the room, and when they're looking at you, say, "What do you see?" And you're like, "Well, just the corner of the room." And you back up 2 steps, and what do you see now? It's like, "Oh, I see, there's a picture on the wall, and I see the windowsill." Take another 2 steps back. What do you see now? "Oh, I can see the people walking down the street outside, and I can see, this plant over here and whatever." And it's like, okay, right now you're in the corner. You got to back up a bit and remember that there's other things going on out here.
Exactly.
Because right now you're just seeing the corner. And I definitely got into my work. My work has taken me to a place, which combines my curiosity, wanting to know what's really going on in the world, and I've gotten into a dark corner of focusing on, like, one aspect of what's going on. I need to pull back,
You do,
and
man. You do, yo. You're one of the most exciting, interesting, amazing people I know. I love you very much. I know that you're feeling something, and you mentioned the word suicide, and I know that you used it to illustrate a
oh yeah,
point.
that's not me. No, no,
Yeah,
yeah.
because I just know, like, uh, but I know, like, I want to extend, like, a relational, like, I understand this, and I understand that metaphor of pulling back. I know what you
Mm,
mean, and I'm glad we talked about the stuff we talked about in this episode. Another way that
mm,
I've been thinking about it has been helpful is to come back to being present again, which is to say that sometimes, as I described it, when I had my depression, I'm looking so intensely trying to understand something, and that's what you're doing. You're looking closely at this, and like you said, integrating these potential horrendous futures in a way that most people on this planet don't, right? Because you're into that, but it's like, so I come back to being present through, like, my breath, my awareness of what is in my immediate space, whether it's another person,
mm,
especially if it's another person, a little 6-year-old child. Children are always great because they're so brilliant. But even if not, like, the light, the sounds, the smells, try to go out in nature. I'm so lucky that now, you see, in
mm,
Baltimore out here, we found this place that got trees, and just, like, back to the what is real, which is the stuff around you. Because when I'm in my head and I'm thinking about linguistics and numbers, and I'm thinking about the cable media and politics, like, I'm gaming and doing things that are external. Like, it's a lot of visualization that's happening. It's a lot of, like, projection that's
mm,
happening. And you're very creative. You're
mm.
extremely creative, and so you are projecting all of these things, and you have all these senses. And so to come back to the absolute present, look at my hand and become familiar with the wrinkles and things like this. Um, and
I'll try it.
but I know you're dope. This has been such a dope a combo, man. Especially because I know how much it's usually like a positive kind of thing. But this like, I usually see you when we're playing basketball, and you're like big energy, and you're like all this stuff. But it's not
Well,
always
yeah, I
that.
mean, it isn't always that, man. But you're also the kind of person that brings out, the best in people, is a cliche, but brings out that positivity. People want to reflect what you put out there, which is a lot of love. And I'm one of those people too, who feels good when I'm around you. And so, yeah, it's like you said, it's all related. And yeah, we're on the blanket. You're like a particularly warm section of the blanket that is everything.
I love that. Yeah, we should end on that, Jesse, man. Thank you very much, man. Thanks for doing
Yeah.
this. I appreciate you, brother. Love you very
Thanks for
much.
having me, Billy, man. Love you, man. And keep on keeping on. Keep on what you're doing. I love that work you're putting in, man.
Yeah, man. Same to you, actually. Do you want to plug, actually? Because tell us about Decouple or right before we go.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So this media project I'm working on, it's Decouple Media. It's my longtime friend, Chris Kiefer, who's actually a doctor, like emergency room doctor, and became obsessed with energy stuff. He's gotten real in deep. He has a podcast. He's at like 170 episodes now or something.
Wow.
And he goes really in deep on energy stuff, and then I'm working on the more YouTube type videos that are to reach a broader audience. So try to simplify some of the things that he talks about on the podcast. So my section is called Decouple Studios, and you can check out if you want to get into that stuff. It's on a playlist within the YouTube channel, and the YouTube channel is Decouple Media. And decouple meaning to decouple human well-being from our ecological impacts. So decoupling, if you can think about they've been going together on a graph, and to decouple is for them to diverge. So you have human well-being for everybody on this planet without destroying it. That's the goal.
So even in that description of like, explaining the decouple, Jesse has this ability to take difficult things and give you just the right amount of visuals and just the right amount of words. And if you were tuned in and at the beginning of this, you got an amazing breakdown of fossil fuels and nuclear. We went from cattle and oxen all the way to nuclear fusion. And then we talked about life and sort of being depressed and being honest about the gravity of our situation. And we did a whole bunch of stuff, so philosophy to deal with that. And I love it. I gotta watch this later, man. Jesse, thank you very much, and have a great night, bro. I love you very much.
Love you too, man. Take good care.
Peace.